I'm not looking for a seat at the table. I'm already here. Wait a minute. What about my reputation? Oh, yeah, that was constant. There was this level of disrespect for women, and they were vocal about it. You know what? I always felt that success was the best revenge. And my focus was what I was going to do to make sure that my team was the most successful and that we overachieved our goals. And the rest was noise to me. One day we were talking, and I said, you know, Roy, I'm getting a lot of pressure about how many women I'm hiring in the organization. And it's not that I would hire a competent woman over a man. And he stopped me. I'll never forget his words. He said, Deborah, why not? He said, if you don't, who will? You're the only female manager in the U.S. sales organization. And again, back to 1990s, he goes, white males are going to hire white males. So it's your job. And you know what? I never looked back. I thought he's right. That is my mission.
Hey friend, welcome back to Hello Moxie. I'm your host, Nicole Donnelly, and today's story starts in the most Hello Moxie way possible, on a plane. I met my guest, Deborah Traficante, sitting next to me on a flight to Atlanta. And she started asking me questions before the plane even took off. She's just who she is. She's so curious and warm and friendly and a natural saleswoman, as you'll learn in this episode. And by the time we landed, we had figured out we had gone to the same college. We're both BYU alumni, and we were both living parallel lives 20 to 30 years apart. It was so serendipitous. So here's who you're about to meet. Before most of us even knew what the internet was, Deborah was already selling it. She spent over a decade at Cisco Systems back in the 90s, climbing her way up to VP of sales for the network service provider division, back when nobody barely even knew what the internet was. She was one of 2 women in a sales org of 40. And she didn't just survive that room, she built teams out of it, teams stacked with women who went on to become CEOs and founders in their own right. And today, she's telling us what it actually took. The grit, the pushback, and the moment she looked in a room full of men in the eye and said, I'm not asking for a seat at this table. I'm already here. I can't wait for you to hear this episode. Let's get into it with Deborah Traficante. Hello and welcome to Hello Moxie. I am so excited. Today's special guest is an amazing woman that I met on a plane of all places. This is such a fun and serendipitous story. Deborah Traficante is our guest today, and she and I met on a plane to Atlanta. And Deborah, when you meet her, she's just one of those people that is just a natural people person. She just immediately started asking questions on the plane, was curious, wanted to chat, and it was just such a fun conversation. And as we were chatting on the plane, we realized that we had a lot more in common than we would have even realized. Like, found out through that conversation that we both went to the same college, Brigham Young University, and we're graduate alumni, which is like, what, Deborah, what are the odds? Like, what are the odds that we would both be sitting on a plane?
There were so many different things that we had in common. It was incredible.
Yes.
Well, all the things you just said about me, I felt about you.
Oh, yes.
You know, you have this great energy about you and enthusiasm. And I loved what you're doing in your organization because we need more of that for women, for sure.
Thank you. I think so too. I'm excited about it. Yeah. And I love what I mean, it was just like I was like riveted when you were telling me all of the stories of what it was like. So anyway, I got to tell our listeners about you and do a little bio. So before most of us knew what the internet even was, Deborah was already selling it. She spent over a decade at Cisco Systems, working her way up the ranks to VP of US sales for network service provider division in the early days. And this was before we even knew about connectivity. It was when connectivity was a bet. And she was on the front lines making the case for technology that most people couldn't even picture in rooms that weren't built for her. And so today she's going to tell us what it was really like behind the scenes, the grit, the breakthroughs, and what it means to pave a road that millions of women would eventually walk down without ever knowing your name. Deborah, welcome to Hello Moxie. You are like the goat.
Oh, well, that's
What's it
kind of you
like?
to say. I'm excited to be here. Anything
Yes.
I can do to help women,
Mm,
that's really probably one of the most things, or one of the things I'm most proud of,
mm.
is all the women that I brought along the way.
I'd love to tell me more about that. What was that like for you? So tell us about what brought you to Cisco, what brought you into tech, and what was the landscape like when you first started at Cisco?
Oh, wow. Well, all right. I'm going to give you a perspective. It was 1990. Our company had just gone public. We had
Mhm.
180 employees. I was the first of two women hired into the sales organization. And the sales organization literally was 40 people worldwide. Imagine it
Wow.
today. Well
My
over
gosh.
100,000 people, and, one of the top companies in the world.
Right.
But in the early days, people didn't know what Cisco was. They thought
Mhm.
we were Cisco, the food company. So I would have to explain, no, we're the networking company. And that went on for about a couple years. But just to kind of bring you back, when I started, I was in tech. It was another company with a proprietary network system
Mhm.
back in the early days. So that would have been circa 88 to 90. And I kept seeing this little company popping up in the education arena. So I'd go to the universities and they were talking about these routers. And my systems engineer, he said, Deborah, you really need to look into this company. They're going to be hot. And I said, well, John, if you think they're so hot, why don't you go to work for them? And he goes, well, I can't stand the VP of US sales, so I would never work for them. And I went, and you want me to work for them? Great. But he had me thinking. So, you know what I did? I wanted to first do my due diligence. So I went to a customer event that Cisco was holding.
Mm.
And it was interesting. So there was this really brilliant woman who was presenting. And then there were a lot of men, as you would imagine, in the tech, especially in those days. And what fascinated me was not as much as what they said, that was interesting, but watching the reaction from the customers. And I thought, there's something here. So I decided I was going to pursue it, and I wanted to work and be one of their salespeople. And so I interviewed, I got the job, and another woman who happened to be named Debbie, at the time I was called Debbie, we both worked for Cisco, and we were the only females. So it was kind of interesting because we were in the same office. And so if somebody got in trouble, one of the VPs left a message and said, David, who was our boss, one of the Debbies went to the engineers. And I'm like, wasn't me. Well, it was me, of course. But it was, I will say this, it was probably one of the most challenging times in my career because it was such a fast paced company. We were starting to grow so quickly. I would go into corporate. We had one building, and then we moved um, further out in Silicon Valley, and we still had one building. But first, it was like a fourth filled, and suddenly it was filled up within 4 months, and we just kept
Wow.
building. So it was explosive growth, even in those early days. But when I say it was the wild, wild west, I mean it. The crazy stuff that would go on. A lot of these people, I mean, if Wall Street could have seen the early days inside of Cisco, they'd be like, oh no, we're not making a bet here. It was crazy. And being a woman had its own set of challenges.
Mm.
The, so here's the interesting part, right? And I'm going to step back to BYU for a minute because you mentioned
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So both of us were raised Latter-day Saints.
Yep.
And in the early days, when I went to BYU, unlike most of the women, and nothing against early childhood education and some of the courses that these women would take, I chose business management because I knew that I was
Mhm.
going to go into sales.
Mhm.
And there were probably maybe four women besides myself in that curriculum. typically in a class. Sometimes I'd be the only woman.
Yeah.
So it was a great education early on going into corporate America because it taught me grit. Because so many of the men, and I'm sure you experienced this, they're conservative. Nothing wrong with conservative. I am, but they were somewhat chauvinistic and would continually undermine what I was trying to do. I remember one guy saying, Deborah, I don't know why you're so competitive. You're just going to get married and have 5 children anyway. And I would just be like aghast that he would say that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, fast forward. That was
What
great.
did you say in response to him? Do you remember?
What did I say to him? I don't remember. I think in that instant, I said, you're underestimating me. And
Yeah.
by the way, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that's my only role. I'm sure I said something like that.
Yeah. That
And
sounds very Deborah.
actually, when I was in a class once, it was a small class, my favorite instructor. Of course, I was always raising my hand, asking questions because I was inquisitive, always.
Yes.
And I'll never forget this guy turned around and he looked at me and he said, I bet you can't even cook, can you? And I just burst out laughing. And I said, small men with small minds. And FYI, I'm actually a great cook. But it was just so funny that he drilled down to you couldn't be feminine and be this.
Right.
So that continued throughout the career, to be honest. You know,
Yeah.
when you're a woman and you're in an environment where it's 95% men, which is what it was even at Cisco. We were an innovative company, but there weren't a lot of women in tech. In fairness to them, there just weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And especially data and voice networks, yes, but that was early days of data. So that was very challenging. And so as a woman, I'll give you a funny story. So I have now, fast forward, it's 94, and I've been promoted to manager. And I'm a regional manager, and I'm starting a whole new division, which, by the way, I started with 0 people. I had to go out and hire everybody across the country, which was interesting in and of itself since I'd never been a manager and I never had a territory larger than 4 states. So
Wow.
I'm sitting in the meeting and there are 2 women and 150 men. So it's a sea of men and me and one other woman. And the VP of US Sales, James Richardson, stood up and said, all right, guys, so here's the deal. We have this event tonight, and I'd like you to wear khakis and loafers. And by the way, you can bring your wives. And I sat there and I went, okay. So I got up after the session and I said, hey, Rick, just FYI, I don't like khakis. And I certainly don't wear loafers. And I don't have a wife. And I said, I know there's only 2 of us, but you need to remember we're here. And of course, he was embarrassed, as you would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I wanted to say, I'm not looking for a seat at the table. I'm already here. So that, I have to tell you, that theme continued throughout my career, all the way up as vice president. I still would get these, and for the audience, what you have to understand, this is in the 90s. Men were much more forward and aggressive, and they would say things that today they'd probably get fired for. But in those days, frankly, they could get away with it. And I used to say, if I went to HR every time somebody offended me, it would be a revolving door. So I would just push it
You just let
aside,
it roll over you.
focus on, the goal ahead and move on. I never let that get to me.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it was frustrating at times because, and I'm sure some of the ladies in the audience understand this, in business, and especially then, if you're an attractive woman, it's almost like they think it's kind of their right. I mean, I actually was talking to a marketing guy who I'd done a lot of business with. We traveled together a lot. And he called me up one day and said, Deborah, I have to tell you, there's a rumor going around that you and I are having an affair. And I just burst out laughing. I went, first of all, that's ridiculous. And he goes, well, it's not that funny. I said, Mike, I'm sorry, but you're married. And I would never do that, even if you weren't. We're business associates.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, yeah, people were warning me that I should steer clear because it might hurt my reputation. I said, wait a minute. What about my reputation? Oh, yeah, that was constant. There was this level of disrespect for women, and they were vocal about it. Not all the time, but yeah,
Yeah.
it would happen. And again, I just had to, you know what? I always felt that success was the best revenge. And my focus was what I was going to do to make sure that my team was the most successful and that we overachieved our goals. And the rest was noise to me. It was frustrating, but I couldn't control them. I could only control what I did in response.
I love that. That is such incredible advice, right? It starts with you and realizing that you are the one that has the power to make change happen rather than expecting other people to change around you.
So, speaking of change,
Mhm.
so I become my first line manager is in 1994. And what the audience needs to understand is we were selling to the internet community. And if I were to ask most people, when did the internet start? Most people don't really know the actual date, the year, but it was 1994. That's when the World Wide Web was launched. That was Netscape. Prior to that, the internet was a bulletin board. And I was selling to the internet when I first joined Cisco, these very bright, very unique characters. They didn't understand salespeople for the most part. And as a woman coming in, it took me about a year to build credibility with these guys. They realized I wasn't just an empty suit. I actually cared about their business and wanted to help them achieve their goals. And so once I built that trust, then it kind of took off from there. And because I lived in Washington, D.C., which I still do in Virginia, 3 of the 4 first providers that basically built the backbone of the internet were here. You had UUNet, PSINet, SprintLink, and the other one was ANS out of New York. So we were the core, if you would. And I developed the expertise from dealing with these people for years. And so my boss promoted me to run the internet service provider team. But the funny part is because nobody understood what the internet was, I couldn't hire one person from inside the company. They're like, we don't want to do this internet thing. We're going to
Oh
stay
my
over in
gosh.
commercial. So I had to hire everyone from the outside, including the engineers,
Wow.
which is funny when you think about it today. But in those early days, people just didn't understand it. So we built the team. And one of my goals, and I'm going to tell you about somebody who became kind of a trusted advisor to me. He was an HR guy, and he and I had become friends. And one day we were talking, and I said, Roy, I'm getting a lot of pressure about how many women I'm hiring in the organization. And it's not that I would hire a competent woman over a man. And he stopped me. I'll never forget his words. He said, Deborah, why not? He said, if you don't, who will? You're the only female manager in the US sales organization. And again, back to 1990s, he goes, white males are going to hire white males. So it's your job. And you know what? I never looked back. I thought he's right. That is my mission, to build the best team, the most diversity, and to reflect our customers too, right? I mean, there were plenty of women in the workforce. And honestly, we were the number 1 team our first year out, number 1 the second, third, fourth. Fifth,
Wow.
sixth, we lost. Reason for that. Seventh, we came back and we were the number one team in the country, actually in the world.
That's
So
incredible.
but I really believe a big part of that was honestly the complexity of the team I had. And it wasn't just that I brought in women, I had great men too. It was, I believed in diversity of thought, not just how you look, but how you
Mhm.
think. And strong leaders, confident people. And I think that was one of the gifts that I have is confidence. I've always believed in myself, even from a young age. And everyone that's listening needs to understand that you you build confidence through competence, right? If you're
Mhm.
prepared, I know when you did TED Talk, you must have practiced over and over and over again before you did that. Of course, preparation, right? When I would stand in
Mhm.
front of an audience of 1,000, I would be prepared.
Mhm.
Well, that goes across the board. And so when I mean diversity of thought, I wanted to find people that had better skill sets than I did,
Mhm.
that had unique skill sets to my team. I wanted to build a team so that it wasn't group think. We really were thinking and we built something so much greater as a result of it. And that's
Mm.
truly, I think, the secret sauce, if you will. It wasn't just that I brought a bunch of women on, I brought a bunch of great women on and great men. And
Mm.
today, if you look at their careers, I can name dozens. These are CEOs in their own rights. These are
Mm.
people that built huge, high profile companies. And some of these people are worth hundreds of millions of dollars today, if not more.
Mm.
So if I were to think about my legacy, it would be that. The
Mm.
people that I mentored, especially the women, because ladies, the things that women haven't done traditionally well is mentor and support each other. Men have the boys club. Well, guess what,
Mhm.
ladies? We need the girls club. We need to support each other. We
Yes.
need to mentor other women. There was no
Mm.
role model when I was at Cisco, but I
Mhm.
became the role model
Mm.
because there weren't any others. So what I wanted to do, it's not fun being a trailblazer. There's a lot of bumps
Mm.
along the road. But guess what? The most rewarding part is the legacy you leave with the people that are impacted. Long after I'm gone, long after people remember me, it's the success of those people that's most important to me. And that was the best
Mm.
part of the job, actually. That and
Mm.
working for one of the most innovative companies in the world, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, again, it goes back to that confidence point.
Mm.
I would see some of my peers, they would build teams that looked just like them, kind of the jock guys. We're going to all play golf. That kind of mentality. To me, that was weak because there was no complexion. There was no complexity to the team. They all
Mm.
looked and sounded the same. And that didn't appeal to me at all. So,
Mm.
I mean, I can expand a lot more, but I'm sure you have other questions.
Yeah, oh my gosh, this is just so good. So, it's very clear that you excelled at building a team and that you thrived in that role. What was it specifically that you mentioned you were looking for diversity of thought in the people that you um, were hiring?
Mhm.
What were some of the I guess green flags that you would look
Okay,
for right away when you were trying to find someone to be on your team?
great question.
Mhm.
I'm going to give you a couple answers to that, and I'm going to give you an example. So, I was interviewing this guy from Boston,
Mm.
Mark, and he was on the voice side. Now, again, go back to the early 90s. There were a lot of voice people. I don't know, for some people in the audience, you may not even remember these companies, but Nortel and those kinds of voice PBX companies, they were coming for the voice world. We didn't have a lot of talent in data yet, but we had some.
Mhm.
And so I was interviewing Mark, and he asked me what I thought was one of the best questions. He said, Deborah, why would you want to hire me? I have no data experience. And I stopped him and I said, now I'd already been talking to him for quite a while, so I got a sense about him. And I said, Mark, I can teach people data. I can't teach them strategy.
Yeah.
And you're a strategic thinker. I'll take you any day of the week over somebody who has a great Rolodex, who knows all the customers, but can't think strategically. That's what I looked for in my team, strategic thinkers. Now, was I always right? No. But you know what? When you make mistakes, you address them quickly. So it's not fun to have to let somebody go. But honestly, I believe you're doing them a favor, because if they're not going to be successful there, they need to find a place where they can excel.
Totally agree.
And so I think I'm going to come back a little bit to some of my belief system. I think God gives us all gifts. And I think if we don't use those gifts, then we've squandered those talents. And so one of the gifts he gave me was a quick mind and a strategic thinker and someone who could recognize talent quickly, which is a huge benefit when you're building a team, of course. So, and I had some great mentors along the way. I remember one of our executives at Cisco, when I was a brand new manager, he said, all right, Deborah, what's the most important thing you can do? And I'm going through all the different strategies. And he said, stop. And I said, of course, you have to build a successful team. And he goes, stop. He goes, it starts and ends with that. It doesn't matter about any of the other things. It's all about the team. And the other thing he said, which I thought was interesting, and for those out there listening that are managers, leadership is so critical, but you can't lead people the same. Some people, right? I mean, he used a funny example. He said, some people are so sensitive in my team. If I raise my voice, they shrivel up. I have others, I literally have to practically knock them over the head to get their attention. So it was funny, but it's true.
It's true.
On your team, I had a team. I had several women. They were fast on their feet. They were so sharp. I would give them one question. I'd say, all right, here's what we need to do. And they'd get it and go. And interestingly enough, and this is true of all men, of course, but the men were kind of plodding along, thinking about it. And so several of them, one in particular, he would always underestimate. He would say, we had quotas because we're in sales. It's all measurable. And so he would give me a number and he would always overachieve. And I would say, Jonathan, you're not doing yourself or the team any favors. I said, stop doing that. You need to be realistic with me. I don't want you to surprise me with big numbers because you're hiding that. You need to be, forthright. Whereas the women, again, these were incredible leaders. They were like, Deborah, I can do it. I'm committing to this. And they would always come through in their commitments. And if there was a problem, they would immediately alert me. There were no surprises. The last thing you want as a leader is to be surprised.
Totally.
You want your team, to be forthright with you, good, bad, or ugly. You're not going to always win the deals, but you need to make sure that that constant communication is there. And the other thing I'll say to women is find someone you really respect. Find somebody that you think could help you and ask for their help. You'd be shocked at how much people appreciate that, right? I mean, especially young people. I love that. I'm happy to help. And the other thing I'll suggest to all of you is use your network. I mean, I've been out of tech for years, but I'll tell you, I still to this day use my network for a variety of things. Whatever the question is, if I know somebody on my network that can help, then I'm going to reach out. And we all need to do that. And we need to be better stewards to each other.
Yeah. I love that. I love that advice, asking for help. I think that's something women traditionally struggle with because asking for help feels like weakness. It feels
it's not
like
at
you
all.
can't do it. Right?
It's actually the opposite.
Oh my gosh.
It's the opposite.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
When you ask somebody for help, then what are you telling them? You're suggesting to them that, first of all, I appreciate and believe in you. I respect you and I would love your help.
Mm,
Nobody wants to say no to that. If they do, you've asked the wrong person. Move on,
yeah.
right?
Mm, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think back to my own career, every single time I've had a major breakthrough step forward in my career, you know what happened right before that? I asked someone for help. Every single time. Like it's totally it's the thing. Like ask for help and people will help you and
Absolutely.
yeah, you will grow and they will grow. People want to help. Like it's kind of
That's
flattering.
that's the real message. They want to
Yeah,
help.
they do. Yeah,
They
like,
do.
people are
And
like, "Oh, I don't
women
wanna bother them,"
need
but, like, people like being helpful.
I agree. And women need to strengthen each other and support
Mhm.
each other.
Yeah, totally.
The other thing I'll mention, I was thinking about a situation on the team. We were competing against one of our big competitors, and this was the largest internet provider in the world at the time.
Mhm.
And new executives had come on board in the firm, and they had a built-in bias against Cisco. So we went from having a great relationship and a partnership to this animosity overnight.
Wow.
And so I sat down with my manager. I was the director, she was the manager, Mary Lou at the time. And I said, Mary Lou, we've got to figure this out. We have a problem. We have two people that are critical to our success, and they do not like Cisco. They came from Wall Street and they had a run in with somebody, and somebody did a run around above them, and it just
Mm,
created a huge problem.
yeah.
So we had to build a whole strategy, and I won't go in all the details of what we did, but we were able to overcome some of the built in bias by showing that we were different and that we were here to help and that we wanted to build a partnership with them. And it took a lot of time. And there was at one point where we actually almost lost the network. And this is where leadership skills become really important. As I'm talking to my team, I realized none of them had confidence that we could win this.
Mm,
Zero. I asked the sales rep, are we going to win this? Nope, we're going to lose. Why are we going to lose? Because they don't like us and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So then I interviewed the engineer. Same thing. Then I interviewed the manager. Everybody on the team believed we were going to lose this. And so I realized, okay, we're in trouble here. We're not competing against our competitor or even the customer at this point. We're competing against ourselves. If my own team believes we're going to lose, we're going to lose. So I
mm,
had to do a reset. So I took each of them individually and I said, okay, you think we're going to lose? Do you think they have a better solution than we do? Absolutely not. Do you think they're going to be more successful if they implement the competitive solution? No, I think they'll fail. I said, okay, if you believe that, then you need to reset your mind. I understand the
mm,
obstacles we have, but we have the better solution. So we have to prove it to them. We can't
mm,
be afraid to push back because we had some very smart people in that room that love to show their intelligence that were going to try to challenge our
mm,
consulting engineers. And so I sat down with them too and I said, look, when he does this, and we know he will, what are you going to say? And so I did this whole reset individually. Then we pulled the team together.
mm.
And then we actually, I forget exactly what we did, but we had these t shirts we made, which was basically like, come on, team, we're going to win this. And
Mhm.
this is how we're going to win this. And we won. But
Amazing.
trust me,
Mm,
I had the CEO of the company in the final throes of those meetings. And he said, Deborah, I want you to know, I understand this has become personal, and this is not personal. This is business. And if they say to me, we need to switch teams, then I'm going to do it. I said, absolutely, John, completely agree. So we're sitting in the meeting, and just so you guys understand the context, I had a very good relationship with the CEO of the customer.
mhm,
So he was in our camp. but his team wasn't. He said, I can't make this decision on my own, Deborah. I need you to convince them to
Yeah.
keep you in the network.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we're in the meeting and, it's pretty tense at first. And then there's some levity. And John Chambers, who was probably one of the greatest salespeople you'll ever meet in your life and one of the greatest CEOs in Silicon Valley. He's a legend for sure. He stood up and he said, listen, this has become personal and we need to step back. This is about your business and your success as a company. And we're here because we believe this is the right solution for you. And we want you to be successful. So if I need to make changes, personnel changes, we will do that. But we're here because we believe this is the only way you'll be truly successful and that you're making a mistake if you go the other direction. So the CEO being the guy he was, it was pretty funny. He stood up and he went like this. He pointed at me and he went like this. And I stood up, I said, okay, I'm out. And then everyone laughed. And then we sat down and it changed everything. So adding levity into tense situations is a great way to lower the temperature. And you got to have fun. The other thing I'll tell you guys is you got to have fun. You've got to love what you do. If you love what you do, you're going to be incredibly successful. If you don't, you won't. Find something that you love. That is my message to you. I mean, I am passionate about sales. I always have been. I could sell anything if I believe in it. I can. And I have. But it's because if I love something and if I believe in it, then I want you to believe in it. And I'm going to convince you why. And I'll give you all the reasons why you should. But if you're in the wrong place, then don't try to fix it. First, figure out in your head what's important to you, what makes you happy, what drives you. Once you figure that out, then go do it. And I promise you, you'll be successful.
Oh my gosh, this is like a master class. You're like a motivational speaker. I love it. I mean, I think you're right about sales. I think people get sales wrong. Like sales is about helping people. Like it truly at its core, it's about helping people,
You know what it is? It's the long game, ladies. You don't go into a relationship with a quick hit and you're out, right? You wouldn't do that personally. And if you do, then you don't want that person anyway. But, right? The reality is, it's the long game. You want to establish credibility with those people. I told you in my early days selling to the internet community, they looked at me like I was some empty suit, a pretty empty suit. Who is she? First of all, they didn't even relate to women. I have to be honest. They were such nerds, but it was true.
I'm imagining like Bill Gates times 10 at that time.
It would be like Bill Gates, honestly. I mean, it was. They were the nerds you knew in school that you didn't talk to in class. Those are the same nerds that are running some of the most important networks in the world. And you had to figure out a way to break through. And the way I did it was I learned their business. I learned what was important to them. And then I fought for those things. Now, I will tell you, though, I was also really good at negotiating what made sense for the company and the customer. I'd have customers say to me, I want this. And I would say, okay, well, help me sell that to my company. I don't think I can sell that. It's not that it has to be 50-50, but what you're asking for when you're not willing to give us any kind of commitments, I couldn't sell that. Help me sell that. And of course, because it puts them in the driver's seat, right? It makes them think through, well, you're right. I guess that's not sellable. The other thing I would do, and I want you guys to picture this. So I was used to selling to the internet community. And I was used to the fast questions and the give and take. And I loved it. I mean, it made me smarter. And I was like a sponge. I was absorbing it all, right? That's the other thing. You have to be open, right? And to understanding things, right? You have to understand what's important to the customer. How are you going to help them? So I'm sitting in this room and I brought this marketing guy, a different one. And he was used to selling to commercial and government. Now you have to understand, Cisco was the darling of Wall Street. We
Yeah.
were beloved. And we were a bit cocky too in a lot of ways. I
From the
wasn't.
beginning, or did that come over time?
Oh no. It was from the beginning.
Yeah.
We were the only game in town from the beginning. And
Mm.
yeah, it came with a lot of bravado, and deservedly so.
Yeah. Mhm.
But it started to change. And what happened was, first, we were the only game in town. First it went from layer 2 to layer 3 for those that understand networking. And we changed the way people did business. Now you could communicate across networks, whereas before they were closed. And then you had the problem of distance. And then
Mm.
the layer 3 is what allowed you to go across the
Mhm.
world,
Yeah.
where you and I could have a quick email with someone anywhere in the world, and it was immediate. But that didn't exist before. And so anyway, we're in this room, and remember, because I've been exposed to these people for years now, and 3 of the 4, and they were all truly the fathers of the internet. It wasn't Al Gore, just in case you guys are wondering. It was actually 5 men. And so I was privileged to be part of that conversation.
What were they
So
like?
cool. It was awesome. But so I'm in this room, and I'm with
Yeah.
UUNet, and they were the first of 2 commercial internet providers, and they're
Mhm.
located right here in Fairfax. They've moved out. Well, they're owned by other companies now. They don't exist as UUNet anymore. But I'm sitting there, and there's probably a room of 10 or 12 engineers from UUNet and me, and the marketing manager that I brought from corporate. And they're firing off questions, and I'm at the whiteboard, and I'm saying, all right, guys, what we need to do is identify the must-haves. And I'm going to be frank. If there's certain things we can't do, I'm going to tell you that's a non-starter for us. So let's figure out
Yeah.
what's workable now. Let's put our top priorities. So we do the whiteboard, and we kind of go back and forth. And it was a great exchange. I had no problems with it. I thought it was perfect. So I left with him, and he goes, wow, they're mean. I said, what? And he goes, they're kind of mean, Deborah. I don't like that. I mean, how do you deal with them? And I laughed. I said, these are the smartest people in the industry. They're the leaders. I said, you want to listen to them. I said, I know you like those commercial guys and the government guys, but if you think of the bell curve, we're over here, and your customers are here and over here. They're not going to help make you
Yeah.
better. But it was funny to me because I'm like completely absorbed in the conversation, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I get it.
Were
And
you
he said, well,
intimidated by them at all?
no.
No.
Initially, I was, I'm sure,
Yeah.
because I didn't understand the business.
Yeah.
But one of my bosses, at first I was insulted, and then I decided it was a compliment. He said, Deborah, you're kind of a nerd. I went, I have never been, well, all right, let me think. Okay, I like that. All right.
The
So
good kind of nerd.
he
Yeah.
meant it in the best way. And what he really meant was, I didn't want to just talk about it. I wanted to understand it, not to the nuts and bolts. I wasn't going to be a systems engineer and be able to program the thing, but I wanted to understand the architecture. I wanted to understand what was important to the customers, what
Yeah.
was paramount for our success. And by
Yeah.
the way, the other thing I'm going to tell your audience is 50% of your time is selling inside the organization. The other is outside if you're in sales. And what I mean by that is you have to persuade, whether it's as an individual contributor or as a first line, second, it doesn't matter. You have to influence the environment inside in order to get the outcome that the customer needs. And so I was constantly selling inside the organization. And, a few times I'll never forget, he was second in command at Cisco, Don Listman. I said, Don, we need to buy this company. They're nipping at our heels here, and this is a big problem for us in the internet. I know you're not seeing it over on commercial, but trust me, they're going to be there. And he, nope, didn't do it. Well, they exploded, right? Went huge. And then the next company, right? And I said, I'm telling you, we need to buy them. And he looked at it, didn't do it. Third company, he said, okay, Deborah, obviously we've screwed up. You're right. Who do we buy next? Now, it took some time and more time than I would have liked because I would say to him, I can't sell this solution. We have a 3-prong thing that we have to put together when they have an elegant solution that's just one device. Who in their right mind is going to buy these 3 things when they have one? No. So my message is realize that you have to influence the internal and the external with whatever job you're doing. So being compelling and having your facts straight is so critical. And the other thing, especially for those that are leaders, you know, I think one of the things I'm most proud of is the loyalty I built in my team, but how much I would fight for them. Now, I also held them accountable. So if you ask anyone who worked for me, I promise you the 2 things that would come to mind are she was tough, but fair. She set the bar high, but she was at or above the bar she was setting for us always. So, you know, that work ethic is key. And selling back into the company, I'll give you a quick story. So I was getting pushback from our VP of engineering. We were trying to do some function for this customer, and it was important, not just for the customer, but for the industry. He was saying, no, we're not going to do it. So I thought, all right, I'm going to come up with a different strategy here. I'm going to put him on the phone with the customer. Let him say no to the customer. So, because he was too far removed, you know, it's easy to say no when you're like 4 levels away. And I thought, I'm bringing you right back. So we had this great conversation, went through this con call, and at the end, he agreed to the functionality. It was because he was part of the equation at that point, and he realized it's not so easy, especially when the customer lays out this plan and why it's important. And so you have to figure out a way. I always told my salespeople, and this is true no matter what business you're in, never take a no from someone who doesn't have the authority to say yes.
That's so good. Okay, friend, if you take nothing else from this conversation, I want you to remember what Deborah said earlier when she said, I'm not looking for a seat at the table, I'm already there. That's a woman who knows exactly who she is and stopped waiting for permission a long time ago. And she didn't get there by waiting for the role to be offered to her. She asked for it every time. She pushed. She was fearless. That's the whole blueprint, and that's what I want for you. And I just loved what she shared about her mom, the woman who raised her on, it's not if, but when. It's not if, but when. Imagine what would shift for you if you woke up every morning with that mindset. Whoever that person is for you, whether it's your mom or who's ever made you feel and know and believe that it's not if, but when, hold on to them, take what they gave you, and keep moving. And Deborah, thank you for your time and your honesty and for being exactly the kind of amazing trailblazer that has made room for the rest of us. To everyone listening, go and be fearless today, and I will see you next time on Hello Moxie.